talk to me again about the marketplace of artists from the perspective of the venues.
Yeah.
You were telling me there's sort of like a stock market equivalent
Yeah.
where all this stuff's quantified to make a decision on who to bring and when.
Yep. Yeah. So if you think of a stock like just like a financial vehicle, think of all the pressures that are on that financial vehicle, right? You have the ability, the number of people who are willing to buy it. You have the price that they're willing to pay for it, and you have the total number of people in a market that could buy that product, right? And so just like any typical market forces, you have that on an artist and their ability to sell a ticket, right? So similarly to what you said, like in Polestar, for instance, Polestar being like, I want to call it like the Bloomberg of the music industry, where they have data on average ticket price per geography, right? So across the country, let's take Chapel Roan, for instance. What can Chapel Roan sell a ticket for in California, Nevada, Indiana, Ohio, right? Well, she's like famously like this Midwest artist, right? So it would be fairly reasonable to assume that like she would do really well in the Midwest, and her ticket prices would actually hold up in areas like the Midwest where things are, the artificial suppression of the cost of living is just because there's a lot less out here, a lot more people with less money to spend on stuff like entertainment. But her ticket prices actually hold well in the Midwest market, whereas like a West Coast act would not be able to sell as many tickets in the Midwest. So you would look at their kind of matrix and you would say, oh, this artist should primarily tour in these states based on streaming data, based on market pricing for their tickets. Like you said, the marketplace of artists. And there's companies out there like Polestar that keep tabs on these things. So for talent buyers, the people who is literally their job to say which artists are on your summer concert series this year, there's a guy or gal behind that is a buyer, right? And just like any asset buyer, they need to make a return on their investment, and that needs to be calculated very, very specifically. And so a buyer will say, can we afford to get Chapel Roan in here? Because some artists are so hot that you can't afford to bring them on at any price. They're just like Taylor Swift, for instance, she calls the shots. She has the hottest ticket in the world. There's no company in the world that could compete with her, so she gets to call the shots. But for many artists, their tour schedule is very much influenced by these buyers and whether or not they can justify or show with data a return on investment for that ticket. Because if they're wrong more often than they're not, that venue is going to suffer. People won't show up for that concert series. What happens when you have costs that are squeezed on these venues like that? They'll start charging more for parking. They'll start charging, instead of $20 a beer, they'll charge $30 a beer. And then people's consumption of music also has a focus on this. Like, how many records did you buy this year?
0.
That's why your ticket prices are so high.
Yeah.
And the beer cost for and so going into my venue experience, how do you offset the cost of the tickets? More expensive beer, more expensive ticket tiers, charging for parking, tiering experiences, right? So VIP, ultra VIP, diamond backstage, VIP green room, right? So like the tiered experiences, how the invention of those type of things would lead from the economics of people buying less music and buying more experienced music through concert tickets. And so that all plays into account when a buyer goes to decide what the concert lineup's going to look like this summer, and an artist goes to like their agent and says, hey, like, how's the tour looking? How's that tour you're putting together? Always influenced by regional geographic influences on whether or not it makes sense for this particular venue in a cornfield in Indiana to bring an act. Sometimes dozens of semi trucks and tour buses and hundreds of people to operate this. Can we make a return on investment? And if that is, it's just like investment banking. If we cannot justify a return on investment, we might not be able to bring that artist.